Mark Johnson was moved when he saw his housekeeper tell the cashier at Joe's Corner store, "I promise to pay you when I can." Subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The March sun shone timidly through the scattered clouds when Mark parked his black BMW in front of Joe's Corner store, a simple brick building that bravely resisted the rampant gentrification of Hope Village. At 52 years old, the businessman carried the weight of a real estate empire he had built apartment by apartment. But that Tuesday morning, something different pulsed in his chest, an inexplicable nostalgia that brought him back to his roots. "What a crazy thing," he murmured to himself, adjusting his Italian tie as he observed the faded facade of the store. It was here that his mother, Mrs. Johnson, used to send him to fetch sugar and oil in the days when every dollar made a difference. Now, 3 decades later, Mark Johnson Developments had his name emblazoned on billboards throughout the city, but he could still smell the unmistakable scent of ripe bananas and powdered soap wafting from the store. The bell jingled as he pushed open the glass door, and Mr. Smith, the owner, looked up from his newspaper with genuine surprise. "Oh, Mark, what a miracle this is. I thought you had forgotten we existed here," said the gray-haired man, a wide smile splitting his weathered face. "Hey, Mr. Smith, how's life treating you?" Mark replied, genuinely happy to see the old acquaintance. "I decided to do some shopping myself today. I've been missing this place." The store maintained its usual layout, narrow aisles lined with shelves that reached from floor to ceiling, products stacked with the precision of someone who knows every inch of the space. The polished concrete floor, always immaculate despite the years, reflected the fluorescent light that hummed softly. In the back, the beverage cooler worked with the familiar hum that Mark remembered from childhood. He grabbed a basket and began to walk through the aisles, choosing items almost randomly: French bread, milk, some fruits. He didn't need any of it. His fridge at home was always stocked by the housekeeper. But there was something therapeutic about that simple ritual, that connection to a time when life was financially more complicated, yet infinitely simpler emotionally. The checkout line had only 3 people when he positioned himself behind a medium-height woman with brown hair tied in a simple bun. She wore a faded floral blouse and jeans that had seen better days. Mark couldn't see her face, but something in her posture, her slightly hunched shoulders, the way she held her synthetic leather bag, felt familiar. "Mr. Joe, could you please put these 2 little things on my tab? I'll pay on Friday, I promise." The woman's voice reached Mark's ears like an electric shock. He recognized that voice. He knew the respectful tone, the careful diction, the way she pronounced each word with an education that transcended her social condition. Mr. Joe, the cashier, a young man in his 30s with a slight belly and thick glasses, looked at the items on the conveyor belt: a package of pasta, a can of oil, sugar, and a small jar of children's medicine. "Oh, Rachel, you know I want to help, but the boss is on my back, right? Ever since some clever folks disappeared without paying." Mr. Joe scratched his head, clearly uncomfortable. "It's not about you, you know that. But the rule is only on credit for those with more than 10 years of account here." Mark felt the blood freeze in his veins. Rachel, his housekeeper, the woman who had been arriving punctually every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at his home in Hilltop Estates for 3 years, always discreet, always efficient, always with a polite "Good morning, Mr. Mark," before silently disappearing through the rooms of the mansion. "I understand, Mr. Joe. Don't worry about it," Rachel replied, her voice maintaining its calm even as Mark could sense the tension she was trying to hide. "Just leave the pasta and oil then. The sugar and medicine. I'll come back later." Her hand trembled almost imperceptibly as she pulled crumpled bills from her wallet. Mark watched, hypnotized and horrified, as she counted $10, $20, $25. It was exactly what she needed for the pasta and oil. "I can't even make a proper purchase," she murmured to herself, thinking no one heard. Mark Johnson, the man who signed $1 million checks without blinking, who bought cars like others bought coffee, felt a lump grow in his throat. Rachel, the woman who cleaned his 5,000-square-foot house, who organized his business trophies, who ironed his $1,000 shirts, was there, in line at a corner store, without money to buy sugar and children's medicine. "It's okay, Rachel. You're a good person, always have been," Mr. Joe said, bagging the purchases in a reusable plastic bag. "Whenever you can, come back." "Thank you, Mr. Joe. God bless you, she replied, taking the bag with her dignity intact despite the humiliating circumstance. When Rachel turned to leave, her eyes met Mark's for a fraction of a second. The recognition was instant and devastating. Her face flushed deep red, her mouth opened slightly in shock, and for a moment that felt eternal, employer and employee stared at each other in absolute silence. "Mr. Mark," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Rachel," he replied, not knowing what else to say. She quickly lowered her eyes, pressed the bag against her chest, and left the store as if fleeing from a fire. Mark stood there, his shopping basket forgotten in his hands, while Mr. Joe looked at him with curiosity. "Do you know each other?" the cashier asked. "Yeah, she works for me," Mark replied automatically, still processing the situation. Mark had just witnessed. "Oh, that's great. So you know she's really nice. Always helping everyone around here, even though she doesn't have much. Her little girl is having some health issues, right? Complicated stuff. That's why she's been a bit tight on money." Little girl. Health issues. The words echoed in Mark's mind as he paid for his own groceries, the $28 seeming trivial compared to the revelation he had just made. In 3 years of professional acquaintance, he had never known that Rachel had a daughter. He had never asked about her personal life beyond the basic pleasantries. When he left the corner store, Mark searched for Rachel with his eyes, but she had already disappeared into the narrow streets of the neighborhood. He got into his BMW and sat there for long minutes, hands on the steering wheel, watching the street traffic through the windshield. "What kind of boss am I?" he asked himself, the voice echoing in the silence of the car. The question followed him throughout the drive back home, hammering in his mind with the persistence of a dripping faucet. When he arrived at Hilltop Estates, he drove through the automatic gate of his property like a robot, parked in the climate-controlled garage, and entered the empty house. This was where Rachel worked 3 times a week. This was where she cleaned his imported marble floors, organized his economics books, washed his designer clothes. And this was where she left from, always punctual, always silent, to return to a reality he had never imagined. Mark poured himself a double whiskey and sat in the leather armchair of the living room, looking at the trophies and plaques that decorated the walls. Businessman of the Year 2019, 2021, 2023. Best Residential Development. Corporate Social Responsibility. Social responsibility, he repeated bitterly, taking a long sip of the whiskey. That night, for the first time in years, Mark Johnson couldn't sleep thinking about spreadsheets or meetings. He lay awake thinking about a woman in a floral blouse who didn't have $20 to buy sugar, and the terrible realization that he might know much less about the people around him than he had thought. Wednesday dawned gray in Springfield, with that typical heavy March sky threatening rain without ever deciding if it would actually rain. Mark woke up at 5:30 in the morning, as always, but this time it wasn't the alarm that pulled him from sleep. It was the thoughts hammering in his head since the night before. He brewed coffee in the state-of-the-art Italian machine, but the dark liquid tasted too bitter that morning. Sitting at the dining table that easily accommodated 12 people, Mark looked at the empty space and wondered when the last time had been that table was used for anything other than his solitary meals. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson." The familiar voice echoed through the house exactly at 7 o'clock. Rachel had arrived for another day of work, punctual as always. Mark's heart raced. He hadn't thought much about how this first encounter after the corner store incident would go. He quickly stood up, almost knocking over his coffee cup, and walked to the kitchen entrance. Rachel was there, in her impeccably pressed navy blue uniform, her hair tied back, as always, organizing her cleaning supplies. But there was something different about her posture. Her shoulders were tenser, and she avoided looking directly at him. "Good morning, Rachel," Mark replied, his voice coming out deeper than usual. How are you?" "I'm fine, yes, sir." "Excuse me, I'll start with the bedrooms," she said quickly, grabbing the vacuum cleaner with more urgency than usual. "Rachel, wait," Mark called before she disappeared down the hallway. "Can we talk for a minute?" She stopped, her back still turned to him, her fingers gripping the vacuum cleaner handle tightly. "Did I do something wrong, Mr. Johnson? Are you not satisfied with my work?" The vulnerability in her voice hit Mark like a punch to the stomach. In 3 years, she had never questioned her performance. She had always been confident, efficient, almost invisible in how she executed her tasks. No, it's nothing like that. On the contrary, he stepped a few paces closer but maintained a respectful distance. Rachel, about yesterday at the corner store. Mr. Johnson, please. She turned, finally looking him in the eyes, and Mark could see the embarrassment she was trying to hide. You don't need to worry about that. It won't interfere with my work, I promise. It was just a difficult moment, but it's over now. But I want to worry. The words came out before he could filter them. You've been working here for 3 years, and I didn't even know you had a daughter. Rachel lowered her eyes, her fingers nervously playing with the vacuum cleaner cord. You never asked, she said simply, without accusation, just stating a fact. The sentence hit Mark with devastating force. It was true. In 3 years of acquaintance, he had never asked a single personal question. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for the excellent work. See you Monday. That was the extent of his communication with the woman who took care of his home. You're right, he admitted, running a hand through his graying hair. And that's terrible on my part. What's your daughter's name? Rachel lifted her eyes, surprised by the question. For a moment, her face lit up with a maternal pride that Mark had never seen before. Maria Eduarda. She's 7 years old, she said, her voice gaining a new softness. She's a smart girl, you know? She's learning to read by herself, loves to draw princesses. And is she sick? Mark asked gently. The smile faded from Rachel's face like a cloud covering the sun. It's complicated, she whispered. The doctors use difficult words, problem with the nervous system. Since she was little, she has had some episodes, some tremors. She needs a very expensive medicine that isn't available at the clinic. Mark felt a tightness in his chest. The children's medicine that she couldn't buy at Joe's corner store. How much does the treatment cost? Mr. Johnson, please, you don't need to. She began to protest. How much does it cost? He repeated more firmly. Rachel hesitated for a long moment, clearly uncomfortable. The medicine costs $600 a month. Not to mention the consultations with the private specialist, because through the public health system, we can only get an appointment every 6 months, and Lily can't wait that long. $600. For Mark, it was less than he spent on a single meal at the sushi restaurant he frequented. For Rachel, it represented almost half of the salary he paid her. Do you have other children? No, sir. Just Lily. Her father. Well, he hasn't been around since he found out about her condition. The bitterness in Rachel's voice was palpable. He said he wouldn't raise a defective child. The anger Mark felt at that moment surprised him. How could a man abandon a sick child? How could someone leave a woman to face such a challenge alone? Rachel, I want to help, he said impulsively. No, Mr. Johnson. She shook her head vigorously. I won't accept charity. I never have, and I won't start now. You already give me work. You pay me properly every month. That's more than a lot of people have. It's not charity, it's... Mark paused, searching for the right words. It's justice. Maybe I'm not paying enough. You pay what was agreed upon. A deal is a deal. Her dignity in her voice was unwavering. I just need to organize myself better, find some extra work on the weekends. You already work here 3 times a week. You must have other clients. I have 2 more houses, yes. And I do some ironing jobs in my spare time, she confirmed. But Lily needs more consultations, and the medicine has gone up in price again. Mark did some quick mental calculations. If Rachel worked for him 3 times a week, plus 2 other houses, plus extra jobs, she was probably working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And still, she could barely afford her daughter's treatment. Where do you live? He asked. In Maplewood, near the old textile factory, she replied, referring to a neighborhood Mark vaguely knew as one of the poorest areas of the city. And how do you get here? By bus. 2 transfers. I leave home at 5:30 in the morning to get here by 7. 2 hours of travel to cross the city. Mark took 15 minutes by car from Hilltop Estates to downtown. He had never thought about the logistics involved in Rachel's life. Look, Rachel, he tried once more. Let me at least raise your salary. You do excellent work. You deserve more. Mr. Johnson, please, don't mix things up, she said firmly. What happened yesterday at the store has nothing to do with my work here. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. It's not pity, Mark protested, but even as he spoke, a part of him wondered if that was exactly what it was. It is, she replied with a perception that surprised him. You saw me in a difficult situation, and now you want to help because you felt bad. But pity doesn't solve anything, Mr. Johnson. It only hurts more. Mark's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was Chris, his partner, probably calling to discuss the afternoon investors meeting. Answer it, Mr. Johnson. It must be important, Rachel said, already picking up the vacuum cleaner again. And please, let's pretend this conversation never happened. I need my job. As Mark answered the phone, watching Rachel walk away down the hallway with her dignity intact, he realized he had just encountered an obstacle he had never faced before: how to help someone who didn't want to be helped. And for the first time in his successful career as a businessman, Mark Johnson felt completely lost about how to proceed. That Thursday, Mark arrived early at the office of MJ Developments, located on the 12th floor of a commercial building in downtown Springfield. The building itself was one of his oldest projects, completed nearly 15 years ago when his company was still just an ambitious dream with limited capital. Now, it occupied the entire floor, with modern glass offices and a privileged view of the cathedral and the central square. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson. You arrived early today," greeted Mrs. Smith, the 58-year-old receptionist who had worked with him since the early days of the company. Her dyed blonde hair and always warm smile made her the first friendly-faced clients and employees encountered upon arrival. "Good morning, Mrs. Smith. How are you?" Mark replied, but this time, unlike his usual automatic greeting, he actually stopped to look at her. "And how is your grandson? Still doing physical therapy?" The surprise on Mrs. Smith's face was evident. It had been months since she mentioned her grandson's motor development issues, but it was the first time Mark had brought it up again. "Wow, I'm glad you remembered. He's getting better, yes. He can walk on his own now, thank God. But the health plan doesn't cover everything, right? We're paying out of pocket. Is it expensive?" "Oh yes. $300 per session, twice a week. But it's worth every penny to see the boy progressing," she said with a proud smile that quickly turned into concern. "Why do you ask? Did something happen?" No. I was just curious," Mark lied, continuing toward his office. But in reality, Mrs. Smith's question had planted a seed in his mind. How many other employees were facing financial difficulties related to their family's health? How many stories like Rachel's was he completely unaware of? In the office, Mark turned on the computer and opened a spreadsheet he rarely consulted, the complete list of employees at the company. 43 people, including himself. Architects, engineers, construction workers, salespeople, administrative staff, cleaning crew, security. Each named their representative family, stories, challenges he had never considered. The door gently swung open, and Chris Anderson entered without ceremony, as he always did. At 48 years old, Mark's partner was his opposite in many ways. Talkative where Mark was reserved, impulsive where Mark was calculated, charismatic where Mark was analytical. He wore a sharp navy suit and carried the contagious energy of someone who had just closed an important deal. "Hey, partner. You disappeared yesterday after lunch. Everything okay?" Chris flopped into the chair across from Mark's desk, crossing his legs casually. "Yeah, all good. Just thinking about some things," Mark replied vaguely. "Thinking? You're always thinking. But yesterday you seemed different. Like worried, you know? Lisa even commented that you barely touched your food." Lisa was their executive assistant, an efficient 45-year-old woman who had managed their schedules for nearly a decade. If she had noticed his distraction, others must have too. "Chris, can I ask you a weird question?" "Sure, go ahead. Do you know about our employees' personal lives?" Chris furrowed his brows, clearly not expecting that kind of question. "What do you mean, personal lives?" "I don't know. If they have kids, if they're going through hardships, if the salary we pay is enough for them to live with dignity." "Man, what's this talk?" Chris laughed, but there was confusion in his eyes. "We pay within the market average, sometimes even above. And it's not our obligation to know everyone's personal life, right? As long as they do their job well. But is that all there is? Just paying the market average, and that's it?" "Mark, you're worrying me. Did something happen? Did someone complain about their salary?" Mark hesitated. How could he explain what he had discovered about Rachel without sounding condescending or violating her privacy? "It's not that. It's just that. Yesterday I found out that someone who works for me is going through serious financial difficulties. She has a sick daughter and can barely afford the treatment." And Chris raised his eyebrows. "Unfortunately, that's the reality of the country, right? We can't solve everyone's problems. But this person has been working in my house for 3 years. 3 years, Chris. And I didn't even know she had a daughter." "Oh, You're talking about Rachel, Chris said, as if the conclusion were obvious. Lisa already mentioned her situation to me. Mark was taken aback. Lisa was Chris's wife. You knew? Man, women talk among themselves, right? Lisa found out when she ran into Rachel at the health clinic a few months back. The girl was having some kind of nervous system crisis. Lisa even offered help, but Rachel is too proud. And you never told me? Dude, I didn't think it was our business. We already pay her salary properly, give her transportation allowance, and pay her 13th month on time. What more can we do? Mark leaned back in his chair, processing the information. Lisa knew. Chris knew. Probably other people knew. He was the only one completely oblivious to the reality of the people around him. Chris, tell me something honestly. Do you think we're good employers? Of course we are. We've never delayed payment. We respect labor rights. We have a nice work environment. What more do you want? But is that enough? Shouldn't we get more involved with the well-being of our employees? Chris leaned forward, his face showing genuine concern. Mark, are you going through some existential crisis? Because this talk isn't like you. You've always been focused, objective. Business is business. Personal life is personal life. Maybe that's exactly the problem, Mark murmured. What problem? We've built a solid, profitable company that creates jobs for 40 people. That's already enough social responsibility. 43, Mark corrected automatically. Whatever. The point is, we can't be everyone's babysitter. If we start meddling in the private lives of our employees, where will it end? Their assistant Lisa appeared at the door, lightly knocking. Excuse me, everyone. Mark, the report you requested about the Green Valley Estates project has arrived. And Chris, your wife called reminding you about lunch with the investors. Thanks, Lisa, Mark said. Wait a minute. Can I ask you a personal question? Lisa looked surprised but nodded. Do you have kids? Yes, I do. 2. Lucas is 15 and Anna is 12. And are they healthy? Studying in private school. Thank God they're fine. And they go to the public school, which is good here in the downtown area. What? Just curiosity. Mark lied again. And is your salary here enough for your family's needs? Lisa exchanged a quick glance with Chris, clearly uncomfortable with the question. It's enough, yes. Of course, we always want more, right? But it's enough to live with dignity. And what if there was a medical emergency? Some expensive treatment? That would be complicated, she admitted. But we manage, right? A family always finds a way. After Lisa left, Chris looked at Mark with an expression that was both amused and concerned. Man, you're scaring the employees with these questions. They're going to think you want to cut salaries or lay people off. Or maybe they'll think I'm finally interested in getting to know them as people. Mark, seriously, stop it. You're creating expectations that we won't be able to meet. If you start asking about everyone's lives, they'll think you're going to solve all their problems. Mark fell silent for a long moment, looking out the window at the street's hustle and bustle. Down below, people hurried by, each carrying their stories, their challenges, their daily struggles. What if we could solve some problems? He finally asked. How? I don't know yet, but maybe it's time to find out. The following Friday, Mark decided to do something he had never done in 15 years of business. Walk through the different departments to talk to the employees. He started at the Palm Grove residential site, a mid-range development that was nearing completion in the south side of the city. The construction site was buzzing with activity even in the afternoon heat. The smell of fresh cement mixed with the sweat of the workers and the constant noise of drills and saws. Mark rarely visited the sites after the initial phase. He usually delegated this oversight to the engineers and foremen. Mr. Johnson, what a pleasant surprise, exclaimed Jack, the foreman, a 55-year-old man with calloused hands and a sun-weathered face. Came to check on the progress? That's right, Jack. How are things going here? Going well, thank God. The team is committed. We'll deliver on time. Jack replied with evident pride. Do you want me to call Engineer Robert? No need. Actually, I wanted to talk to you all. With the team. Jack seemed surprised, but gestured to some bricklayers working nearby. Hey, everyone. The boss wants to chat with you. 6 men approached, taking off their hard hats and wiping their sweaty hands on their shirts. Mark recognized them by sight, but felt embarrassed that he didn't know any of their names. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark, the owner of the company, he said, feeling strangely uncomfortable with his own introduction. We know who you are, said a tall, thin man in his 40s, smiling shyly. I'm Tony. I've been working here for about 2 years. And I'm Charlie, said another, younger man, perhaps 25. I started here as a laborer. Now I'm a bricklayer. One by one, they introduced themselves: Joe, Paul, Luis, Edward. Names that Mark heard and tried to remember, feeling the weight of his own disconnection from these men who built his projects. So, are you all satisfied working here? Any complaints, suggestions? The men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting that kind of question from the boss. Oh no, Mr. Johnson. It's good to work here, Tony said, speaking for the others. Pay is on time. Safety equipment is always available. It's better than many places around here. And how are your families? Are they doing well? Yes, sir, replied Charlie. I have 2 little boys. My wife takes care of them at home. And can you support your family comfortably with the salary here? The silence that followed was eloquent. The men looked at each other again, but this time with discomfort. Oh, Mr. Johnson, we always manage, right? Said Paul, a middle-aged man with gray hair. The salary is fair. I can't complain. But, well, if you really want to know, sometimes it gets a bit tight. What do you mean? It's just that my wife had to stop working to take care of my mother-in-law, who has Alzheimer's. And medication for that disease is really expensive. So I do some odd jobs on weekends, painting, repairs. And you, Charlie? How do you manage with 2 small children? My wife works as a cleaner for 3 houses. We take turns looking after the kids. It doesn't leave much, but we get by. Mark mentally did the calculations. The salary of a bricklayer in his company was $2,200, above the regional average. But for a family with small children and medical expenses, there probably wasn't much left over. Do you have health insurance? The company offers the basic plan, right? But it doesn't cover everything. For the kids, it's just the public health system, explained Charlie. And what if you needed more expensive treatment? An exam, a surgery? That's where it gets complicated, admitted Edward, speaking for the first time. My brother-in-law had to have heart surgery last year. The whole family pitched in to pay. They even sold the car. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, and Mark discovered a universe of challenges he had never imagined. Children with learning difficulties who needed tutoring. Elderly parents requiring special care. Expensive medications that weren't covered by the government program. They all spoke with resignation, as if those difficulties were a natural part of life. No one complained directly. No one blamed the company or the boss. They simply accepted that that's just how life is, and people always manage. Mr. Johnson, said Jack when the others returned to work, can I say something? Of course. It's the first time in 20 years of construction that I've seen a boss come talk to the workers like this. The team was a bit surprised, but they liked it. It's good to know that the boss cares. And you, Jack? Do you have a family too? I do. A wife and 3 kids. The oldest is in engineering school at a private college. It's his dream to work for a company like yours. That must be expensive, private college. Yeah, Jack sighed. $1,200 a month. My wife and I work like crazy to pay for it. She sells sweets and snacks. I do some extra jobs. But it's worth it. He's the first in the family to attend college. Mark felt a tightness in his chest. $1,200 was what he spent on 2 meals at his favorite restaurant. And what if he couldn't pay? Would he lose his spot? It's happened a couple of times that payments were late. The coordinator was understanding and gave an extension. But I know it can't keep happening. Jack scratched his head, clearly uncomfortable with the topic. Why these questions, Mr. Johnson? Is there going to be some change in the company? Maybe, Mark replied honestly. I'm thinking about some things. When he returned to the office at the end of the afternoon, Mark found Chris in his office, reviewing contracts with an impatient look. Dude, where have you been? I've been looking for you all afternoon. The mall investors called 3 times. I went to visit the Palm Grove site. That's fine, but why didn't you take? Where's your phone? And why did it take so long? A site visit shouldn't take 4 hours. I was talking to the staff. Talking about what? About their lives. About how they manage with the salaries we pay. About their children's dreams. Chris stopped what he was doing and looked at Mark with real concern. Mark, seriously, you're scaring me. This obsession with the staff's lives isn't normal. You've always been the most professional guy I know. Maybe it's time to be less professional and more human. But why? The company is doing well. Everyone seems satisfied. Everyone seems satisfied because they have no choice, Chris. Jack is working himself to the bone to pay for his son's college. Paul is picking up odd jobs on the weekends because his mother-in-law has Alzheimer's. Charlie works during the day and his wife at night just to take turns with the kids. And so, that's the reality of the country. We can't change all of America, but we can change the reality for 43 people who work for us. How? I don't know yet, Mark admitted. But I will figure it out. Chris stood up, gathering the contracts. Look, you're my partner and my friend. If you want to do some social work, fine. Sponsor a soccer team, donate some food baskets at Christmas. But don't mess with the company's structure because of a crisis of conscience. After Chris left, Mark was alone in his office, looking at the city lights coming on at dusk. For the first time in years, he wondered if having enough money to solve people's problems created a moral obligation to do so. And for the first time in his life, he seriously considered the possibility that financial success meant nothing if it wasn't accompanied by a human purpose. Mark's weekend was different from all the others in recent years. Instead of golfing at the club or socializing with other business people, he spent Saturday driving through the streets of Springfield, observing the city with eyes that seemed to see for the first time. He passed through Maplewood, the neighborhood where Rachel lived. The simple brick houses, many unfinished, contrasted sharply with the tall walls and well-kept gardens of Hilltop Estates. Children played in the dirt streets, mothers hung laundry on improvised lines, and men chatted in groups on the corners. It was a parallel world that existed just a few kilometers from his mansion, but it could have been on another planet given the social distance that separated them. On Sunday, something unprecedented happened. He couldn't concentrate on anything. He tried to read financial reports, but the numbers seemed meaningless. He turned on the television, but the news about the economy and politics sounded empty. For the first time in decades, Mark Johnson was restless about issues that didn't involve profit or business growth. On Monday, when Rachel arrived for work, he was already waiting for her in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee prepared. "Good morning, Rachel. Please sit here with me." She hesitated at the door, clearly surprised by the invitation. "Mr. Johnson, I need to start cleaning." "The cleaning can wait. I need to talk to you." Reluctantly, Rachel sat at the edge of the chair, her hands crossed in her lap, avoiding looking directly at him. "Rachel, last week you told me you didn't want charity. I respected that, but I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation." "Mr. Johnson, please. Let me finish," he gently interrupted. "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering justice." She raised her eyes, confused. "What do you mean?" "In 3 years, I've never questioned whether the salary I pay is truly fair. I've never asked myself if you can live with dignity on what you receive. I've never considered the real cost of living you have. You pay what was agreed. What was agreed might be wrong." Mark interrupted her. "If you work 3 times a week here, plus 2 other houses, plus extra jobs, and still barely manage to buy medicine for your daughter, then something is very wrong." Rachel remained silent, but he could see tears forming in her eyes. "I want to raise your salary to $2,000 a month. And I want you to work only here, 3 times a week. No more other jobs." "No, Mr. Johnson, that's not right." "Why isn't it right?" Because I don't deserve all of this. I just clean your house. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect." The response hit Mark like a slap in the face. Rachel truly believed she was worth less because her work was considered less important by society. "Rachel, listen to me." He leaned forward, his voice firm but gentle. "You've taken care of my house for 3 years. You've never broken anything, never missed a day, never given a reason for complaint. You're punctual, honest, and careful. Why should that be worth less than the work of any other professional?" "But it's domestic work." "And so? Who said that the work of a domestic worker is worth less than that of a lawyer or a doctor? Who decided that hierarchy?" Rachel looked at him in surprise, as if she had never considered that perspective. "Everyone says that. Everyone is wrong," Mark replied categorically. "Honest work has the same value, no matter what it is." They sat in silence for a few minutes. Rachel wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, struggling to control her emotion. "What if you regret it? What if in a few months you think you were too generous?" "I won't regret it. Because it's not generosity, it's correcting an injustice." I don't know what to say." "Say you accept. And tell me more about Lily. I want to know her story." For the first time since he had known her, Rachel smiled genuinely in his presence. She is special even with all the problems." When the crises pass, she becomes cheerful and playful. She draws beautiful princesses, invents crazy stories. Doctors? What do they say about the treatment? They say the medication helps control the episodes, but it doesn't cure. They mentioned an experimental surgery, but it's very expensive. They only do it in Springfield. How much does it cost? $50,000, she said in a low voice. That might seem like a small amount to you, but for me, it's a fortune, Mark added. I understand. The doctor said there's a foundation that sometimes helps, but the waiting list is huge. What's the name of the foundation? Hope Institute, something like that. It's run by foreigners, it seems. Mark made a mental note. Hope Institute. It wouldn't be hard to find out more information. Rachel, besides the salary increase, I want you to promise me one thing. What? If Lily needs anything related to her treatment, you tell me. No pride, no shame. As if you were a family member asking another for help. Mr. Johnson, promise. She hesitated for a long moment before nodding. I promise. That afternoon, Mark canceled all meetings and stayed in the office researching the Hope Institute. He discovered it was an American foundation that funded experimental treatments for children with rare neurological diseases. They had an office in Brazil, but there really was an extensive waiting list. He called Chris, who answered with an irritated voice. Dude, where are you? The mall's lawyer has been waiting here for an hour. Cancel the meeting. What do you mean, cancel? It's about the funding for the most important project of the year. Reschedule. I need to take care of something more important. More important than $15 million in investment. Much more important. Mark, have you lost your mind? Maybe. Or maybe I've finally understood what really matters. Mark hung up and called Dr. Peter Harris, his personal doctor and longtime friend. Peter, I need some information. Do you know anyone who works with pediatric neurology? Complex cases. I know a few. What? It's about an employee's daughter. She has a neurological problem that needs experimental surgery. Can you give me the details? I can provide some guidance. Sure. And Peter, do you know the Hope Institute? I do. It's a serious organization. They do excellent work. But getting their approval is difficult. Difficult or impossible. Difficult. With the right contacts and the proper documentation, you can speed up the process. What kind of contacts? Well, I have some friends who work with them. If you want, I can make some calls. I want that. It's urgent. When he hung up the phone, Mark leaned back in his chair and looked out the window. Down below, the city continued its normal rhythm, people coming and going, each carrying their stories and challenges. For the first time in a long time, he felt he was doing something truly worthwhile. 2 weeks later, Mark was in his office when Sandra walked in with a worried expression. Mark, there's a call from Dr. Peter Harris. He said it's about the matter you discussed. Put him through. Mark answered immediately. Mark, I have good news about the girl. I've managed to schedule an appointment with Dr. Robert Castellano, one of the best pediatric neurologists in the country. He works with the Hope Institute and can evaluate the case. That's great. When? Next Thursday at 2 in the afternoon at St. Joseph's Hospital in Springfield. But there's one detail. The private consultation costs $3,000. No problem. I'll take care of everything. Mark, can I ask you something? Why this interest? Is this employee special to you? The question caught Mark off guard. Was Rachel special? Or was he simply discovering that everyone around him was special, and he had never paid attention? She's a good person, Peter, and her daughter deserves a chance. I understand. I'll send you the details by email. Mark hung up and called Rachel, who was organizing the library. Rachel, I need to talk to you. She came into the room, wiping her hands on her apron. I managed to schedule an appointment with a specialist in Springfield for Lily. It's next Thursday. Rachel's face lit up, but soon darkened. In Springfield? Mr. Johnson, I don't have money for the trip, and there's work. Don't worry about any of that. I'll take you both. And about work, Thursday isn't your day here anyway. You're going to take us? Yes, I will. We'll leave early, arrive before the appointment, and come back the same day. Rachel was silent for a moment, clearly moved. Why are you doing all this? The question echoed Peter's. Mark paused to think of an answer. Because I can. And because it's the right thing to do. But I'll never be able to pay you back. No one is asking you to pay. Sometimes people do good things simply because they can, not because they expect something in return. On Thursday, Mark arrived at Maplewood at 6 in the morning. It was his first time in the neighborhood, and he was impressed by the difference that daylight revealed compared to his previous reconnaissance visit. The houses, though simple, were well kept. Small gardens with colorful flowers decorated the facades. Uniformed children walked to school, greeting their neighbors. There was a sense of community that he didn't feel in his luxury condominium, where he hardly knew his neighbors. Rachel's house was a two-bedroom construction, painted light blue with white details. A small front porch had pots with well-tended plants. When he honked, she immediately came out, carrying a small bag and holding the hand of a girl. Lily was exactly as Mark had imagined. Curly brown hair, big curious eyes, a shy smile. She wore a pink dress with princess designs, well-kept shoes despite being clearly worn. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson," Rachel said, helping her daughter into the car. "Lily, say hello to him." "Good morning," the girl said softly, looking at Mark with curiosity. "Good morning, Lily. What a beautiful dress." She smiled, losing some of her shyness. "Mommy said you are the—" "That's true. But today I'm just a friend who will take you to see a very special doctor." During the 2-hour drive to Springfield, Mark discovered a side of Rachel he had never seen before. She was affectionate and patient with her daughter, inventing games to pass the time, singing children's songs in a soft voice. Lily was bright and talkative, asking about everything she saw along the road, demonstrating a sharp intelligence that contrasted with her medical condition. "Mommy, why are we seeing another doctor?" Lily asked at one point. "Because this new doctor knows more about your problem, my love. Maybe he can help you feel even better. I don't like doctors. They always ask hard questions and give me bitter medicine." "But you're a brave girl, aren't you?" Mark interjected. "And doctors just want to help." "That's true," Lily agreed. "Mommy always says I'm brave." St. Joseph's Hospital impressed both Rachel and Lily. The spacious lobby, the gleaming marble, the discreet efficiency of the service. Everything contrasted dramatically with the clinics they were used to. Dr. Robert Castellano was a man in his 50s, with graying hair, thin-rimmed glasses, and a genuinely warm smile. His office was modern yet cozy, with educational toys scattered around to make children feel at ease. "So you are Lily," he said, kneeling in front of the girl. "I heard you like to draw princesses." "I do," Lily replied excitedly. "Do you want to see?" "Of course I do." She pulled out a crumpled sheet from her mother's bag, showing a colorful drawing of a princess with curly hair like hers. "How beautiful. This princess looks like you." "That's because I made her look like me." The doctor spent an hour examining Lily, asking questions, testing reflexes, observing her reactions. Rachel answered all the questions with impressive precision. She knew every detail of her daughter's condition, every medication, every symptom. When he finished, Dr. Castellano asked to speak privately with the adults. "Lily's case is complex, but I have good news. There is indeed a surgery that can help significantly. It's not a cure, but it can drastically reduce the frequency and intensity of her episodes." "And the risks?" Rachel asked, her voice tense. "There are risks, as with any surgery. But given her age and the specific type of injury, the chances of success are high, about 80%. "And the cost?" Mark asked. $50,000, including hospitalization and post-operative care. "It's expensive, but—" "Doctor," Mark interrupted, "if I cover the surgery, when can it be done?" Rachel looked at him with wide eyes. "Mr. Johnson, no? I can't accept that." "Of course you can," he replied calmly. "Doctor, when?" "Well, if there are no financial concerns, I can schedule it for next week." "But—" He looked at Rachel. "The decision is the mother's." Rachel was silently crying. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Mark replied gently. "For Lily. But how will I pay for this one day?" "You won't pay. This is a gift. From one person to another, from one family to another." On the way back to Springfield, Lily slept in the back seat while Rachel and Mark spoke quietly. "Why are you doing this?" she asked for the third time. "Because someone needs to," he replied. "And because I can. But I'm just an employee. You are a mother fighting for her daughter. That is far more important than any job title. I will never forget this." "Neither will I," Mark replied, and he realized it was true. The news of Lily's surgery spread through the Maplewood neighborhood with the typical speed of small communities. The following Tuesday, when Mark arrived to pick up Rachel and Lily for the hospitalization in Springfield, he found a scene he would never forget. Dozens of neighbors gathered in front of the blue house. Mrs. Johnson, the 70-year-old woman next door, had baked a chocolate cake for good luck. Mr. Joe, the mechanic from the corner, wiped his greasy hands to hand over a drawing his daughter had made for Lily. Women cried discreetly while others organized a prayer circle. "What is this crowd?" Mark asked as he got out of the car. "It's the neighborhood folks," Rachel replied, clearly moved. When they heard about the surgery, they wanted to say goodbye to Lily. An elderly woman approached Mark, shyly extending her hand. "You are Rachel's boss, right? I'm Mrs. Johnson, her neighbor for 15 years. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Johnson. I wanted to thank you for what you are doing for our girl. Rachel is like a daughter to everyone here. And Lily, well, Lily is like a granddaughter to all of us." Mark looked around and saw honest faces, marked by hard work and simple living, but illuminated by genuine affection. It was the kind of community he had lost when he left that very neighborhood in search of success. "Actually, I should be the one thanking you," he replied, surprising himself with his sincerity. "You reminded me of what really matters in life." Lily appeared at the door, wearing the same pink dress from the appointment, carrying a small backpack with her drawings and some toys. When she saw all those people, her eyes widened. "You came to see me?" she asked, incredulous. "We came to wish you good luck, princess," shouted Mr. Joe, and everyone applauded. The girl smiled radiantly and ran to hug each person, as if they were real aunts and uncles. Mark watched the scene with a lump in his throat, remembering when he was a child and had that same kind of connection with the community. During the drive to Springfield, Lily was visibly nervous but tried to hide it by asking questions about everything. "Mr. Johnson, after the surgery, will I be smarter?" "You are already very smart, Lily. The surgery will make you feel better, have more energy." Mark took a deep breath. "You'll be able to play more?" "Much more," Rachel replied, stroking her daughter's hair. "And draw, run, study, everything you want," Mark assured her. The hospital admission was a smooth yet emotional process. Lily displayed impressive courage for a 7-year-old, but Rachel was visibly tense. "What if something goes wrong?" she whispered to Mark while Lily chatted with the nurse. "It won't," he replied with more conviction than he felt. "Dr. Smith is one of the best, and Lily is a strong girl." The surgery was scheduled for 7 in the morning the next day. Mark booked rooms at a nearby hotel for himself and Rachel, but she insisted on spending the night at the hospital, sleeping in the chair next to her daughter's bed. The next morning, when they took Lily to the operating room, she looked at Mark and said, "Mr. Mark, take care of my mom while I'm sleeping, okay? She gets really worried." The phrase hit Mark like a bolt of lightning. A 7-year-old, about to undergo brain surgery, was worried about taking care of her mother. "I promise," he replied, hugging the girl. "And you promise to be okay for us?" "I promise." The 6 hours of surgery were the longest of Mark's life. He and Rachel waited in the waiting room, alternating between tense conversations and agonizing silences. He learned more about her life in those hours than in 3 years of knowing her. He found out that she had become pregnant at 19, that Lily's father had abandoned her when he learned about the illness. He learned that she had been working since she was 14, that her own mother had died when Lily was born, and that she had no family left besides her daughter. "Do you know what my biggest fear is?" she said during one of the silent moments. "What?" "That something happens to me and Lily is left alone in the world. She has no one but me." "Now she has," Mark replied without thinking, and soon realized the weight of those words. Rachel looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean, she has the neighbors, the community." "No, you said something else." Mark stood up and walked to the window, looking at the movement of the street below. Cars, people, lives crossing paths without knowing each other. Exactly how his life had been until a few weeks ago. "Rachel, can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Sure. I have a daughter. Her name is Sarah. She's 26. We haven't spoken in almost 2 years. Why? Because she thinks I only care about money. She said I built an empire but lost my humanity in the process." "And is she wrong?" Mark turned to face her. "No, she's right. I spent so much time accumulating wealth that I forgot what wealth is for." "And what is it for?" "To do what we're doing today. To give opportunities. To take care of the people who matter." At 3 in the afternoon, Dr. Smith appeared in the waiting room, still wearing surgical scrubs. His tired face lit up with a smile. The surgery was a complete success. Lily behaved like a champ. Rachel broke down in tears, and for the first time in his adult life, Mark felt like crying too. "When can we see her?" he asked. "In an hour she'll be awake. But remember, she'll be a bit confused at first. It's normal after anesthesia." When they finally got to see Lily, she was pale but awake, with a small bandage on her head and a weak smile on her face. "Mom? Mr. Mark? I did it." "Did what, my love?" Rachel asked, holding her hand. "I wasn't scared. I was brave like a real princess." At that moment, Mark understood something fundamental. It wasn't him saving Lily and Rachel. They were saving him. 3 weeks after the surgery, Lily was already recovered and playing normally in the backyard when something extraordinary happened. Mark was reviewing some contracts in his office when Sandra walked in with a surprised expression on her face. "Mark, there's a young woman here who says she's your daughter." "Sarah." Mark's heart stopped for a moment. Sarah, his daughter, whom he hadn't seen in almost 2 years, was there. "Send her in," he said, trying to hide the nervousness in his voice. Sarah entered the room with the same determined posture she had inherited from him. At 26, she was a beautiful young woman, with long brown hair, intelligent green eyes, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt from a non-profit organization. Mark stood up, unsure whether to hug her or just greet her. "Hi, Dad." "Sarah, what a surprise. How are you?" "I'm good. Can I sit?" Of course, of course." She sat down in the chair across from his desk, but didn't relax her posture. There was a tension in the air that Mark knew well. It was the same tension from their last conversations, 2 years earlier. "Dad, I heard you've been doing different things lately." "What do you mean?" "A friend of mine works at St. Joseph's Hospital. She told me about a surgery you funded for the daughter of a housekeeper." Mark fell silent. Sarah continued. "At first, I thought it was some kind of marketing, a strategy to improve the company's image. And now I came here to find out." "Why the sudden interest?" Sarah shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable. Because I've been working for 2 years in Maplewood, at a nonprofit that helps underprivileged children. And suddenly everyone is talking about the boss of Rachel, who changed a family's life." Mark was stunned. His daughter was working in the same neighborhood where Rachel lived, and he had never known. "You work there?" "I do. That's where I should have met you a long time ago if you had cared about my life instead of just worrying about your business." The accusation hurt, but Mark knew it was fair. "Sarah, let me finish," she interrupted him. "When we fought 2 years ago, I accused you of being a heartless capitalist, remember? I said you only cared about profit and never thought about the social impact of what you did." "I remember." "Well, suddenly you show up at my workplace, indirectly, doing exactly the kind of thing I always wanted you to do." "What do you mean?" "Rachel has been volunteering at our NGO for almost a year. She helps organize activities for the kids on weekends. Even with all of Duda's problems, she always found time to help other families." Mark leaned back in his chair, processing the information. Rachel, despite her own struggles, still found the energy to volunteer. "And what about you, Dad? Is this a marketing strategy, or have you really changed?" The question echoed in the silence of the room. Mark looked at his daughter and saw in her the same intensity he recognized in himself, but directed toward purposes he was just beginning to understand. "I've changed," he said simply. "How?" "I discovered that I didn't know anything about the people around me. I found out that financial success means nothing if you can't look into the eyes of the people who work for you and know who they really are." Amanda studied his face for a long moment. "And what do you intend to do with this discovery?" "I don't know yet, but I know I can't keep living the way I did before." "Rachel speaks very highly of you," Amanda said, slightly softening her tone. "She says you not only paid for the surgery, but spent the whole day at the hospital with them." "That's not something a boss does for an employee." "It's not something a boss does for an employee," Mark agreed. "It's something a person does for another person." For a few minutes, father and daughter sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. "Dad, can I show you something?" "Sure." Amanda took her phone out of her bag and showed him some photos. "This is the project I coordinate at the NGO. Tutoring for kids whose parents work all day. Most of the parents are construction workers, housekeepers, cleaners." Mark looked at the photos. Kids smiling in makeshift classrooms, volunteers helping with homework, a small library set up with donated books. "It's beautiful, Amanda. It's necessary. We serve 80 kids, But we could serve 200 if we had the resources. What kind of resources? School supplies, books, a few basic computers, a larger space. Simple things, but they make a difference. Mark looked at the photos again, this time paying attention to the details. The peeling walls of the room, the makeshift desks, the goodwill of the volunteers trying to make up for the lack of resources. How much would it cost to improve this? Amanda looked at him suspiciously. Why? Curiosity. Dad, if this is just another attempt to buy my forgiveness with money. It's not, he interrupted her. It's an attempt to understand how I can use money in a meaningful way. She hesitated before responding. About $50,000 would solve the most urgent problems. Supplies for a year, some used computers, basic renovations of the room. And to make a real impact, $200,000 would set up a proper structure. But Dad, I don't want your money if it's just to make you feel better about yourself. What if it's so I can finally do something I can be proud to tell you about? Amanda lowered her eyes, clearly emotional. Dad, I missed you these 2 years. I missed you too. But I can't pretend nothing happened. You hurt me a lot. I know that. And I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking for a chance to show that I can be the father you always wanted me to be. How? By working with you on this project. Not just funding it, but understanding, participating. Would you do that? I would. If you let me. Amanda wiped away a tear that escaped. You would have to meet the families, hear their stories, understand the real needs. You can't solve everything with money. I learned that from Rachel and Duda. And it can't just be a project. It has to be a long-term commitment. Amanda, I'm 52 years old. If I don't do this now, when will I? For the first time in 2 years, his daughter smiled at him. Okay, Dad, but with one condition. What? You will have to get your hands dirty. No air-conditioned office. You'll meet the families, hear their stories, truly understand what we work with. I accept. And you'll have to endure the volunteers doubting you at first. A rich businessman doing charity is not well seen in the community. I'll have to prove that it's not charity. It's justice. Amanda stood up and, for the first time in 2 years, hugged her father. Welcome back, Dad. 2 months later, Mark was unrecognizable. He had traded his Italian suits for jeans and t-shirts, leather shoes for comfortable sneakers, and spent more time in Maplewood than in his downtown office. The transformation had begun the day after his conversation with Amanda when she took him to see the NGO project for the first time. Hope House, as it was informally called, operated in a simple 3-room building provided by the local church. On the first day, Mark arrived at 7 in the morning with Amanda, who insisted he see the reality from the start. Dad, I want you to understand one thing, she said as they walked down the dirt road. These people don't need a savior. They need opportunity and respect. Mark's first impression was of impressive organization. Despite the lack of resources, everything was clean and tidy. Volunteers arrived on time. Children were welcomed with warmth, and activities took place with affectionate discipline. Everyone, this is my dad, Mark, Amanda announced to the group of 8 volunteers. He will be working with us from now on. The reactions were varied. Some polite smiles. Mark noticed that his presence caused discomfort. A wealthy businessman involved in a social project always raised suspicions. Mr. Mark, a familiar voice suddenly shouted. It was Lily, who ran to hug him enthusiastically. Are you going to play with us here too? The girl's spontaneous hug instantly broke the ice. If Lily trusted him, the other children could too. I sure will, Princess. I came to learn from you all. Learn what? Everything you want to teach me. Rachel soon appeared, carrying a box of school supplies. Mr. Mark, what a surprise. Sarah didn't mention you were coming. Surprise for me too, he replied, sharing a knowing glance with Sarah. It seems you two know each other well. Rachel is one of our best volunteers, Sarah explained. Despite all the challenges she faced, she always found time to help other kids. During that first morning, Mark observed more than he participated. He saw children arriving in public school uniforms, some without proper school supplies, others with barely concealed hunger. He saw volunteers who clearly didn't have much, but shared what they could. He saw mothers who worked all day and entrusted their children to that improvised community. Uncle Mark, a 9-year-old girl, approached him during recess. Are you going to be a teacher for any subject? I don't know yet. What subject do you all need the most? Math, several children replied in chorus. It's the hardest. Mark laughed. Math had always been his favorite subject. But teaching children was quite different from calculating business profits. I can try to help, but you all will have to be patient with me, okay? It's been a long time since I taught. Were you a teacher before? A 10-year-old boy asked. No, but, well, anyone can learn to teach, right? In the following weeks, Mark became a constant presence at the Hope House. He arrived early, stayed late, and gradually earned the trust of both the children and the volunteers. His first significant contribution was practical. He rented a larger building 2 blocks away, with 6 classrooms, proper bathrooms, a small kitchen, and an outdoor recreation area. But he insisted that the decision be made together with the volunteers and families. Folks, I don't want anyone to feel obligated to accept this, he said during a meeting with parents and volunteers. But I can fund a better space if you think it's worth it. Of course it's worth it, exclaimed Mrs. Johnson, Lily's neighbor. The kids deserve a nice place to study. But with one condition, Mr. Joe, the mechanic, said. We continue to be part of the decisions. This is ours, not a favor to anyone. I completely agree, Mark replied. In fact, I'd like to propose something more. He took a deep breath before continuing. I want to create a foundation, officially, with full transparency, public accountability. And I want you all to be part of the board. The silence that followed was long. What do you mean, board? Sarah asked, surprised. Community representatives making decisions alongside me. I don't want to be the owner of anything anymore. I want to be a partner. And what if we disagree on something? One of the mothers questioned. Then we talk until we reach an agreement. Either you convince me, or I convince you. But the decision is made together. 3 months after Mark's first visit to the project, the Real Hope Foundation was officially established. The name had been suggested by Lily. Real Hope, not just a dream. The new headquarters operated flawlessly. It served 150 children, had a library with 1,000 books, a computer lab with 10 computers, a kitchen for enhanced snacks, and a recreation area. But what made Mark most proud was not the infrastructure, but the management. Everything decided in assembly, total transparency, active participation from families. Dad, can I tell you something? Sarah asked one afternoon while organizing teaching materials in the library. Of course. You've really changed. For real. What do you mean? 2 years ago, you would have just built everything and waited for applause. Now you listen, talk, accept suggestions. You even accept criticism. It was true. The previous week, Mr. Joe had publicly questioned some of the foundation's expenses, and instead of getting offended, Mark had requested an external audit to reassure the community. I learned that being right isn't as important as doing the right thing, he replied. And what is the right thing? Mark stopped organizing the books and looked out the window. Outside, Lily was playing with other children, running freely around the yard, showing no signs of the crises that had troubled her before the surgery. The right thing is understanding that we can only be happy when the people around us can also be happy. Very philosophical for a businessman, Sarah joked. Maybe I'm not just a businessman anymore. What are you then? Mark smiled, a response forming naturally in his mind. I'm a neighbor. Autumn arrived in Springfield with its golden afternoons and cooler nights, and Mark found himself sitting in one of the white plastic chairs in the yard of the Real Hope Foundation, watching the bustle of yet another typical afternoon. 8 months had passed since that morning at the corner store that changed everything, and he could hardly recognize the man he had been before. Mr. Mark, can you help me with this math problem? Asked Lucas, a 12-year-old boy who always struggled with math. Sure, Lucas. Come here. As he explained fraction division to the boy, Mark reflected on how completely his life had transformed. MJ Developments continued to operate. In fact, it was more prosperous than ever, as he had implemented a profit-sharing policy and extended benefits that extraordinarily motivated the entire team. Chris, initially resistant, now managed the company on a daily basis, allowing Mark to dedicate more and more time to social work. I got it, Lucas exclaimed, solving the next problem on his own. Thank you, Mr. Mark. You're welcome, champ. You're more. When the boy ran off to play with his friends, Lily approached with a piece of paper in hand, and that smile that always warmed Mark's heart. I made a drawing for you, she said, extending the paper. It was a colorful drawing showing several people holding hands around a large house. In the center, a girl with curly hair smiled radiantly. That's us from the foundation, she explained, pointing to each figure. This is Mommy. This is Amanda. This is you. And these are the other aunts and uncles. And who's that beautiful girl in the middle? That's me. But now I'm happy all the time because I don't have those bad things in my head anymore. Mark swallowed the lump that formed in his throat. Since the surgery, Lily hadn't had a single crisis. The test showed that the operation had been an absolute success. And you will always be happy, princess. I know. And you too. The child's simple wisdom moved him. It was true. He was genuinely happy for the first time in decades. Rachel appeared shortly after, coming from the kitchen where she was helping prepare the afternoon snack for the children. Mr. Mark, the board meeting is soon. Aren't you going to be late? No, I'll just finish helping Gabriel with his essay. Their relationship had naturally evolved over the months. Rachel continued to work in his home 3 times a week, but now she was also the treasurer of the foundation, a role she held with impressive competence. They had become genuine friends, united by their shared experience and mutual affection for Lily. Mr. Mark, she said, hesitating a bit, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Don't you miss your old life? The trips, the fancy restaurants, those business parties? The question made him reflect. Indeed, his social life had changed completely. Instead of dinners at exclusive clubs, he preferred neighborhood barbecues. Instead of trips to luxury resorts, his vacations were spent organizing summer camps for the children at the foundation. I don't miss it, he replied honestly. In fact, I didn't even know I was unhappy until I discovered what it really feels like to be happy. And what is it like? It's waking up every day knowing I'm going to do something that matters. It's knowing the name of every child here, understanding the struggles and achievements of each family. It's feeling that I am part of something bigger than my own success. Rachel smiled. You've changed a lot in these months. And you too. You're more confident, more at ease. It's because now I know I have value, she said simply. I'm not just someone who cleans other people's houses. I'm the treasurer of a foundation. I'm a respected volunteer. I'm the mother of a healthy girl. I'm important. You've always been important, Rachel. I just didn't see it. The board meeting took place in the main room of the foundation. Present were Amanda, Rachel, Mr. Joe, Mrs. Johnson, Teacher Marina, and Chris, who, to everyone's surprise, had become deeply involved with the project in recent months. First item on the agenda, announced Amanda, who was presiding over the meeting. Evaluation of the semester's results. The numbers were impressive. 150 children regularly served, 95% improvement in academic performance, 0 school dropout, waiting list with more than 80 interested families. Second item, expansion proposal. Do we have resources to open a second unit? Asked Mr. Joe, always practical. We do, confirmed Mark. But the question is, do we want to grow or do we want to deepen the work here? Why not both? Suggested Mrs. Johnson. We can train people here to help start projects in other neighborhoods. The discussion lasted for 2 hours, with everyone actively participating and all voices being heard. It was democracy in action, something Mark had never experienced in his traditional businesses. Third item, Amanda continued. Invitation to present the project at the National Congress of Social Responsibility. What do you mean? Asked Rachel. We received an invitation to present the Real Hope Foundation as a model of partnership between the private sector and the community. It would be in Washington, a talk for 500 business people. Who will present? Asked Teacher Marina. All of us, Mark replied. Each one speaks about their area. Rachel about community financial management, Mr. Joe about popular participation, Mrs. Johnson about family impact. I don't know how to speak in public, protested Rachel. Of course you do, encouraged Amanda. You talk about the foundation with passion. Just do the same thing, but for more people. When the meeting ended and everyone left, Mark and Amanda stayed behind to organize the chairs. Dad, can I ask you a question I've always wanted to ask? Go ahead. Do you regret anything from these 8 months? Mark stopped what he was doing and looked at his daughter. I do regret something. Amanda looked surprised. What? That it took me 52 years to discover that this is the life I wanted to live. And what if you had discovered it earlier? Maybe you wouldn't have distanced yourself from me. Maybe we would have worked together all along. Dad, I need to tell you something. What? These months working with you have been the best of my life. I finally have the dad I've always dreamed of having. And I finally have the daughter I always had but didn't know how to appreciate. They embraced in silence. each forgiving the mistakes of the past and celebrating the building of a future together. When Mark got home that night, the same home where Rachel worked, but which now felt much less lonely, he found an envelope that had been delivered during the day. It was an official letter from the Hope Institute, thanking him for the donation he had made on behalf of all the children served by the foundation. With the money, they could fund 10 more surgeries like Lily's. Mark smiled, putting the letter in the drawer where he kept other important documents: birth certificates from the foundation, photos of the children, drawings that adoptees, Duda-Lily, SEU Marcelo-Mr. Johnson, Rosangela-Rachel, Amanda-Sarah. He received thank you letters from families. He sat in the armchair in the living room, the same one where he used to drink whiskey alone while planning his next business ventures, and looked at the trophies on the walls. Businessman of the Year, Corporate Social Responsibility, Best Residential Development. Now they shared space with children's drawings, photos from the foundation, and a small plaque that Lily had made for him. Best friend in the world. It was the award he was most proud of. Mark picked up the phone and called Rachel. Hello. Rachel, it's me. How is Lily? She's great. Just fell asleep. Why are you calling? I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for what, Mr. Johnson? For teaching me that money only has value when used to build bridges between people. I think it was you who taught me that, she replied, laughing softly. No, Rachel. You taught me that dignity is priceless, that family is built with love, and that courage doesn't depend on a bank account. Lily taught me that joy is contagious and that children teach adults to be good again. And Sarah taught me that it's never too late to be the father she deserves. And what did you teach us? Mark paused for a moment. I hope I taught that everyone deserves opportunities, and that when we combine resources with goodwill, there is no problem without a solution. You did indeed. And much more. What else? You taught us that a boss and an employee can be true friends, that rich and poor can work together, and that family isn't just those who share the same blood. After hanging up, Mark stayed in the armchair for a few more minutes, reflecting on the 8 months that had completely transformed his existence. Tomorrow would be another day at the foundation. More children to teach, more families to meet, more dreams to help realize. And for the first time in his life, he could hardly wait to wake up and start it all over again. Because he had finally discovered that true success is not measured by what we accumulate, but by what we share. And that wealth only makes sense when used to build a world where all children can draw happy princesses and all parents can sleep peacefully knowing their children will have opportunities. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and if you watched until here, comment, I watched until here, and share your thoughts on this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's going to be very exciting.